Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Racing Line podcast of 2023. Joey and I have a very special guest on this week's episode. He's a three-time Australian Superbike champion, has been very successful in endurance racing, winning the Phillip Island 8-hour and also second in Suzuki. Competed in the World Superbike Championship as well as a two-time winner in the British Superbikes. We welcome Josh Waters to the pod. Welcome, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you for coming on, Josh. This is I've been very excited for this one for a long time, but I was left in limbo on Facebook chat for 14 months, so I didn't expect this one to happen. So thank you very much for coming on eventually.
All good.
The reason I when we first started this podcast, our sort of ambition and goal was to hear the stories of people in Australia in motorsport and sort of learn from them. And you sort of sprang up to my mind straight away because I had sort of been following British Superbikes for a bit. I knew you were Australian. Firstly, I didn't realize you were related to your cousin Cam at that time. And that sort of came sort of into the picture. I don't even think Cam was as prolific in supercars as he is now back then either. But like sort of starting from sort of square one, my first question would be, you've raced Australian superbikes very successfully. You then moved to Britain to race British superbikes. But what is sort of the path that you had to go on to even get, those steps in place for sort of us everyday people? The sort of tiers of motorsport are blurry as it is just for normal four-wheelers. So for us, I think two-wheelers is even more blurry.
Yeah. No, so a lot of it was my parents sacrificing a lot. And I still live in Mildura, and that's where I grew up and lived. But I raced dirt track when I was a young fella, and all the major events are all up in the Central Coast area. So that's around 14 hours. So on a Friday, mum and dad would drive us up there, race on Sunday, drive back, Sunday night, Monday. And they did that for maybe 12 or so years.
And that was nearly weekly, you're saying?
Not weekly, but there was like a lot of events that we did in a year. There was a lot of Ks on the car and, no holidays or anything like that because they were sacrificing. Then I moved into road racing. I had the dream thinking that I was going to be a 125 Grand Prix rider, but it was a bit harder than what it looked like on TV. Also, at level, the Australian bikes at the time weren't at the same level and so on. Then I went the route that I would go. Back when I was racing, I was fortunate that the teams, the manufacturers, had rides on 600s. So it was the aim to try and get a ride for a manufacturer. And then, did that. So
who was your first? So who was your first manufacturer that you sort of got a ride with?
I rode for Kawasaki for 2 years. And then I joined Suzuki after that, and I rode for them for a really long period of time, which was, and when I was ready, that's when they moved me up to the Superbike. And my first year on the Superbike, I was fortunate enough to win, so that was good. I had a really big crash. They opened up some doors. My dream was I wanted to race in America. I never wanted to go to the VSB or anything. It's just that the GFC came in and America downhill really quick. And the British Championship, it's a booming series, the biggest domestic. They have great TV. It's like the V8s. The big thing is, it's run by the people that own majority of the good circuits. So it's in your face, and the racing is really good and everything. But I think it's a bit easier because it's people know about it, and big brands, which is a thing in Australia that's difficult to get, is the the corporate brands.
So from some outsider like myself, I think when I started following British Superbikes, it would have been after the GFC. So was the American scene much more equivalent to what BSB is now? And has it just, or was
it was like the teams, the levels weren't really, it was like, one team was right up here and then there was no in between. So but I was dreaming to get on one of those really good teams. And I was fortunate enough, Suzuki did open up some doors, but I had a really bad crash, the worst one of my life, touch wood. So it kind of put a halt to that. And then, I had to wait and get better. And that's when I got some opportunities to race the World Superbikes with the Suzuki team with Yoshimura, and then do the 8 hour and so on. And that's how I kind of got the gig. The Suzuki 8 hour was a really big event. I went really good that year. It just all clicked, and I thought, BSB can't be that hard. I just smoked the guy that is the champion. It's a little bit hard. It's like everything, we had some top guys from the British Championship come and race our final round. And when they're in there, it was an Australian guy, Billy McConnell. He races Superstock, and he won the final round of the Superstock. So the Superstock's the class under Superbike. But he killed it, but he was nowhere. But it's just different. He's a really good rider and everything like that. If he spent a year in Australia, I'm sure he'd go good, but it's just different.
I think that last race that they do at the Bend was the last 2 years when they've sort of had Miller, they've had Josh Hook come over, and they've given them bikes that they're sort of familiar with as well. But it still shows that even when you bring in these great riders from, other disciplines, just jumping on any bike is a big challenge when you have to go to a track where other people are more familiar with a series that they're more familiar with, on tires that they're more familiar with as well. It is a big juggling act. And I think with motorbikes especially, I think I'm more than I'll admit it. Even if you look at how Josh Brooks performed in British Superbikes the last 2 years, at one stage he looked unstoppable. Same bike, and he can't even get into the showdown. So I think that just is a testament of how tight these championships are.
100%, and it's I'm not sure what happened with Josh. You look at his results, and obviously something happened. But confidence is the biggest thing, and that's something that I know when I raced in the English Championship that I struggled with. I'd never lived out of home, like my hometown. It was just a huge eye opener, and the 3 years I was there, I didn't enjoy them. I didn't. Of course, we met lots of good people and so on, but I enjoy. It's not like you're giving up, but I enjoy racing here. You know what? It's also the people seem to be a little bit more honest here than I think
that British Superbike grid, just from an outsider looking in, seems like one of the most cutthroat in terms of contracts I've ever heard of in my life. Doesn't matter if you're, Josh, I think has won 3 championships. You had Taron McKenzie, who's won it last year. It doesn't matter. Everyone's 1 year contracts, and it's the biggest dick around at the end of the season just to find a seat and put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's insane.
And they're waiting for Taz to sign or what Taz is going to do, and then it opens the doors for 3 other people.
It's mental. I've a sort of question just to touch on with you, because we're talking about jump different bikes and stuff. So you were a very Suzuki kind of guy for a long time. I remember when you came back from British Superbikes and you won the championship for the 3rd time on the Suzuki again. And I think Suzuki has a very big following in Australia. I think it's around the world, but it sort of is sad of their demise because they've got a massive following here. But then since then, you jumped on the new ZX10 And then, well, COVID happened and that sort of folded away. And then you jumped on the new BMW at the start of last year, and that didn't really pan out. And then you jumped onto the Boost Ducati, and I think that was like a great way of showcasing how you can struggle on different bikes, but you don't lose your skill. It's just sometimes the bike isn't where it needs to be, and then you'd get the right machinery, and you can catapult yourself straight to the top in the blink of an eye. What was it like going from those different bikes?
Yeah, I actually, and I also rode. I had to go on the Team Honda bike too.
Okay.
At a test. So I was like a bike journo. The only one I didn't ride was Mike Jones's bike.
Yeah,
so
Yamaha.
I was going to ask,
be on.
and I could have done like a story on them all for news. Yeah, but I think the one that I was on was the one to be on. But yeah, it was. Yeah, it just clicked. It's crazy how you like something in. I don't want to waste time and so on. If I'm finished, but there was something inside of me saying that, yeah. And everyone has a story and all those kind of things. But I just, I wanted to give it one last crack. And then I actually went out and got a loan and bought my own bike to do the final 2 rounds. Not a Ducati, obviously, because it would have been a big loan to get one of them. Yeah. And then started to do that. And then just all the stars aligned. The owner of Boost was going to be at the Grand Prix. Wayne didn't want to race the Grand Prix because Wayne's so strong at Phillip Island. I got to do a track day before the Grand Prix because it was like, oh, is he going to go all right? And also, I didn't want to go and make myself look like a fool. So, yeah, it clicked on that day that I wrote. I went pretty good. And I thought, I'm not going to look like an idiot when I go and race at the Grand Prix at least. And then the team, they honestly go, oh, we think you're going to go all right. And I was like, oh, thanks for pissing in my pocket. But artist, best result had been 3rd for I won since 2018. Yeah. And then, it just all clicked at the Grand Prix. I was 3rd in the first session, 2nd in the next one, and then won the first race which was really good for the crowd that was still there. Everyone was excited. And then the next day, I got to sleep on it and was able to go better again and break the lap record. So obviously clicked.
Well, I was very happy to see on that bike and do well as well, because it is a great bike, but it's always good to see someone who, like you said, ever since your chairmanship probably hasn't had the luck of the green, or just a fair shake. And I think that's all you can ask for, just a fair shake. And especially because you were teamed up with Brian Starring at Kawasaki, and you both were sort of around and about the same spot together. And then he sort of jumped on the other Ducati this year, and he's looked really good on that. So then for you to jump on very similar machinery and also look, really good on there as well, for the lack of time you had on it, I think was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was
and then
pretty good.
And then now to see you go for it again with a whole season. And like you said, it does seem to be the bike to be on more often than not. I think you'll have
and in saying that, it is a different bike to ride, because a lot of people have said, oh, if you just obviously like the Boost bike, they've done an amazing job. Wayne and the team have done so much good work with that bike, and especially at Phillip Island, it's so fast there. But that's it's the same bike that they rode at Tailem Bend, or different circuit. And then that's what I said to someone like Mike Jones actually rode one, and he's done 1 trillion laps on this V4R, and he struggled on it. So look at him on the R1, how fast he is. So they're a different bike. Like if you fight it fights back at you, and it's physical to ride and so on. But then if you just different, but I really enjoy it.
Here's an interesting question. I don't know if you can go into it too much. When it sort of comes to superbikes, like I don't know the specs of how an Australian superbike sort of control the bike. I know that the British superbikes have, they're very open in terms of suspension, swing arms. You can pretty much change anything as long as you don't change sort of the engine, the frame. Like there's a lot of stuff you can change. Is the Australian superbike formula more like a super stock in that respect, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the two different Ducati. Sorry, you go. You explain.
Yeah. So our bike, super stock bikes. They're just the team don't do anything to the engine. Yeah. The big thing is the chassis. We're allowed to change the rear shock. So we put a different shock absorber in it, and we're allowed to change the fork internals. But yeah, after that, it's the electronics also we're allowed to change. So they're the main area we work on. But yeah, you're saying in the British Superbikes, it's more like world Superbikes, so they can change the offsets, the rake,
they can change nearly everything except the ECU, because they all run that control ECU.
ECU, but then it's like the good teams have got the good electronics guys that system in the best way possible to get the best out of it. So yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. There's the YouTube series that Honda UK made called Building the Blade, and it's about that new Honda bike, and I love it because it shows. But when I was watching, I was like, man, this superbike business is a farce. These aren't superbikes at all. They're so, they're so far from the road bike.
But
it's not even funny.
So like at the final or at the Phillip Island round, that was also with the World Superbike. So the World Superbikes are another spec up. I'm going to milk it because I was pretty happy on Saturday morning in our qualifying. We had the same tyres as they, so the same race tyre. Only Batista and Johnny Ray had gone quicker than us at that time.
Really?
Just that's how good a job the team have done getting the best out of the bike that you can buy off the showroom. Or
So there's say the Boost Ducati bike and then the Desmo Sport bike. How much sort of, other than sort of people actually setting up the bike for the weekend, is there much of a difference of the two bikes from the two different Ducati teams?
I think they run a different exhaust system, maybe. There's like they run a different brand of suspension, but
nothing like major.
Major, so
that's very interesting. I have a sort of a question on the Australian Superbikes landscape rather than you yourself. With sort of COVID, when COVID sort of hit, it didn't help the Australian Superbike Championship with like teams like Kawasaki and sort of Suzuki pulling a lot of funding. But I do think, and I want to know what your opinion on this as well, there have been a few, I think, intelligent decisions by Superbikes to put themselves in the sort of forefront of Australian motorsport. I think the round with supercars at Hidden Valley is a no-brainer. It's such a awesome event to see supercars and superbikes on the same track on the same weekend, especially when they have those the speed comparisons and stuff like that. I think that's awesome. And then they're also doing a night race at Sydney Motorsport Park this year, which I think is an awesome idea as well. In terms of like stuff like that, what do you think Australian Superbike sort of would also need to do to keep this momentum growing? I mean, even bringing riders in at the end of the year for that final round is another really, awesome event, sort of just to show, Australian talents coming back into the pool.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, that it's like I think our races are really good because they're they're not super long, but they go for between 18 to 22 minutes. So it's not long enough to get bored. You can pull away, but it's not like you're winning by 15 seconds. Everyone that does watch it says like, oh, geez, that it is exciting and so on. It's we need to somehow get it out to the public, and so people can witness it, and then they can be like, hey, we might like it. It's on free to air. It's on SBS Live, our races and stuff. It's just not enough people know that it's actually on. So I don't know. Yeah. What
like
it's
it
like,
is,
yeah.
It is true, I think, because I sort of told myself, if you're gonna watch British Superbikes at stupid hours of the night, and you're gonna watch World Superbikes at stupid hours of the night, you have an obligation to watch Australian Superbikes as well. So I made a conscious decision sort of to to start watching it, and then once you start watching it, like you say, it is a great product to consume.
I guess that's kind of
H?
I guess that's kind of along my line of questioning. Someone who's grown up watching supercars, Formula One, all that kind of stuff, the exposure for bikes isn't as big in this country. So what kind of drove your passion toward bikes in the first place, and how can they increase that sort of to the wider public? Because these guys have been trying to get me on MotoGP for a couple of years now, and it's just I can't get onto it. So
that's because you're stubborn, mate.
I'm the opposite. I sit and I watch the MotoGP, and you need to go and witness the MotoGP, because like Formula One's awesome, but the problem is in Formula One, I believe, is the bottom team to the top team, the gap is like ridiculous. Where the MotoGP, it's maybe more the rider, because the bottom team still got the riders. The bloke who won last year's championship, he's riding that bike.
We've been saying this for a whole year, mate. We've been telling him for a whole year.
And
I'm happy someone else is saying it.
And hear the sound. That's at Phillip Island. When you hear the sound, see the color, you'll just be like, oh my, yeah.
I've heard that.
I think
I like all forms of motorsport. I watch it. I wasn't putting down any other thing. I was just saying, like, with our ASBK, and I believe it's people are, and I'm like it with the time. They just don't want to waste time. Like, even though you sometimes don't achieve things in the day, you think, I can't be bothered watching that. I'm going to waste, but it's 20 minutes of your life. And if it's like a good 20 minutes, where some other events go for really long, and I'm one of them, I go off and mow the lawns, and then you're like, check, who's winning? I don't mean it in I know that lots more people watch that form of racing, but that's all I meant. Like it, and we're on at a perfect time. We're on at lunchtime, so have your lunch Sunday, and then go and mow the lawns at 2.
No, I think that's actually a perfect way to sort of to surmise it. So that's the race lengths are probably perfect for the spectacle that it is, not trying to be anything more. Because I watch every MotoGP race, and I think they're still about 5 minutes too long. It sort of gets to a stage where nothing changes really at the end.
Exactly.
Most of the time.
Yeah, Marquez will sit there for the last, and then you're like, knew he was going to do that, and you can visibly say,
even this year you had sort of a few races where Bagnaia and Bastianini would follow each other, and if the last lap came 5 laps earlier, the same thing would have happened. One of them would have had a lunge. I have a sort of left field question for you, because I saw today that your brothers did the Finke, and I've only learned about the Finke this last year because I was watching Dakar, and I went on a massive Toby Price deep dive.
What's the Finke? Explain.
I'll explain it to you. So I was watching Toby Price in the Dakar, and I was like, what is the Dakar properly? So I started researching the Dakar, and then it linked me to a movie called Finke, and I was like, what's this Finke? And then it's like Australian desert rally race. with motorbikes and sort of rally buggies. And I was like, what the heck is this? I've never heard of this before in my life. And then I went in this massive deep dive of the Finke. And I was like, this is one of the coolest things I've never heard about in my life. And then I was listening to Gypsy Tales podcast, and they started talking about the Finke. And I've just gone like, I'm obsessed with this thing now. And then I saw that your brothers did it. And I'm like, what is it like to actually sort of set out and do this thing, number one? And I saw you were involved as well. Do you want to sell us on this idea of the Finke? Like, you look passionate about it as well, because I think it's awesome.
I'm very fortunate. Both my younger brothers do a lot for me. So this is the only one that I can really do something back. Neither of them will let me touch their bike, but I enjoy cooking. So I do cooking and I rub their backs when we're up at Finke. But yeah, so both of them road raced. The youngest brother, he's got the most natural talent out of the three of us. He's good at whatever he does. And then the area that we live in is Mildura. So there's this big desert race called the Hatter Desert Race. Okay. But Finke is different, because it's, I think, 211 Ks one way. The preparation that the boys put into it is crazy. Driving, they'll work all day on a Thursday, get in the car, drive. We live in Mildura again. To Alice Springs, which is like 18 or 20 hours. Get there Friday morning. One of them will ride, then the other one picks the other one up, and then the other one rides. Then this is after they've driven there, then they ride up and back on Saturday and Sunday, and then drive home Sunday night.
Is this just to practice like desert riding?
Because I said it's like 211 Ks. That's one of the biggest things, is knowing where you're going, because the speeds are so fast. So if you chop the throttle, your rolling momentum dies. It's trying to keep your average speed, but it's hard when you don't know what's over the hill, and there's a lot of places that look the same, but have dropaways But
I was watching.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, I couldn't believe it. I was like, if you're in the sort of middle or the back of the pack, there is so much dust in the air. I have no idea how they're navigating, through the dust on these, like you say, they're flying down a desert. There's bumps, there's jumps, and in a dune buggy, it looks freaky as it is. But on a bike where it's just two wheels, you're trying to stay straight and you can't see jack shit. I'm just like, this is like one of like, it's, for me, it's like an equivalent. It's not the same thing, but it's like an equivalent of like an Isle of Man, where you're just going so fast, and if you come off, you can very easily die.
Yeah. Well, Nicholas, he had a huge crash last year, just before the first fuel stop. So they have to fuel up twice in the race. So stop between 75 and 90 Ks. Wherever you have you have the fast fuelers, which the stop takes between 8 to 12 seconds.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, he had a huge crash, and the medical, though, were really good, but it's hard. The other cool thing is, and it was bad 2 years ago when someone got killed, but is the spectators. They're all there camping. A lot of them are on the piss. But when something happens, like the Aussie spirit, happens, he was off with the fairies, but they got him back on the bike, and
So he was all right from that?
No, he actually had a bleeding lung, and but he was just fortunate that the hospital let him. They checked him out, and then they released him. And then, like an hour later, they were like, "Hey, you have to get back in here." One of the doctors. So, but the other brother, he went really well in the top 5, which is a huge thing. And you were saying about the dust. I guess maybe some of the speeds of the guys back aren't as slow as, they're not 20 minutes or 30 minutes slower than the guy who got third or fourth or something like that. It's just the dust. You can't see. Even some of the guys that are in the top 10, like this, and I'm only going off what my brothers say, but some spots you're down to like walking speed because you can't see what's 2 feet ahead. So
100%. I saw it and I was like, man, you would like the advantage for qualifying up the front in that thing would be night and day, because it's literally probably like riding at night and day.
Yeah, so the top 20, if you're in the top 20, you go off at 2 at a time. And then I think your 20th back or like 21st back, I think you get released in groups of 5. So it's like...
Which makes it even harder.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. Maybe 3 or 5. It used to be 5, I think. But yeah, anyway, it's a group of a few bikes. And it's really important to try and get in to be in that top 20.
Could you be when you are finished from road racing, could you be tempted to do something like that, or that's not on your radar?
Nah, I would ride. I'd do it to ride the circuit, to
like a joyride.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. Looking at the bumps and stuff, it's not an enjoyment. Like it's not, and like driving a car maybe, or like a Formula One car. The guys that drive them really fast. But if me or you were to jump, it'd be so difficult because we're not going fast enough. At Finke, the faster you go, that they're just floating over the bumps. Or of course they can still catch themselves out. But
it just looks like such an awesome event to be part of.
And
like something I do want to go see in person, because like you see Dakar highlights usually once a year.
Yeah.
But it just looked like, because there's spectators as well, it just has a bit more of that sort of carnival atmosphere and a bit of foolery, which is awesome.
Yeah, you camp and you're organising your, when you go up to Finke and there's no water, there's no power, so you have to
roughing it.
It's like what's it called? Off the grid.
You're literally off the grid. That's awesome.
No phone service. Phone service is bloody terrible there.
That's probably a blessing, because you don't want to be in your phone when you're about to drive to Katoomba from Sydney and back twice. You don't do it there and back every day. So you go one way, 211, and then one way 211. That's insane.
Yep.
That on a dirt bike on bumps. Holy moly. So this year, 2023, you're racing for the Boost team, one rider.
Yeah.
Same team as what Wayne has been using for the last couple of years.
Yep.
Are you, like, I suppose it's a bit ostentatious to say it, but is the championship a real thought in your mind with the the bike that you've got underneath you?
Yeah. The team and the bike that I've got, my aim is to try and win my 4th championship and be the only rider that's done that. That's 100% my goal.
Yeah. And this will be probably your first good chance of doing it on another manufacturer as well, because what your other 3 ones at Suzuki, right?
100%. So I just need to try my hardest and do my best for the team every weekend, and hopefully that's good enough.
I have a question from my father, because I said,
because
my father was sort of who even pointed me out to you many years ago, because he was the one who was like, oh, there's Josh Brooks in British Superbikes, he's Aussie. There's Josh Waters in British Superbikes, he's Aussie. And then we were sort of obsessed with the Isle of Man at that time as well. So we were watching Brooksy at the Isle of Man. But he said he wanted to know, because he's a bit of a riding enthusiast. He said, when you're coming down the straight at Sydney Motorsport Park, are you gearing down when you go into that first corner, or are you just coasting and dropping knee? He said that looks like one of the scariest corners you could take.
No, you like brake maybe 100, 200, I don't know. There's a certain point you just know after riding, looking, but you go down 2 gears, brake and turn in. So you load the front up and
Do different tracks?
Not on a 125 bike you could go, but you're going about 100 lower.
That shows you how either how highly my dad thinks of his riding skills, that he would think that's a possibility or not. You've ridden here, you've ridden in Britain, you've also ridden at Assen. As a rider, here's a question that I really find fascinating. Like when I watch tracks like Cadwell Park, they're like a little, or even like Alton, they're such like a narrow track, barriers on the side. They look like a normal racetrack, but the barriers are so close, you don't realize until you put a motorbike on it and you go, oh snap, if they come off there, they're hitting the barrier, they're not sliding through kilometers of grass like you see on MotoGP. Does that sort of cross your mind when you come to a different track? Or is it you just sort of shut it out?
Nah, you kind of shut it out. So we're really fortunate in Australia with our circuits.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alton and Cadwell were shitholes. It was okay maybe, and that was the other thing. I never went and rode them. I only ever went to race meetings and rode them. So maybe if I rode, it'd be all right. But yeah.
Well, I used to. My dad had this picture on his my dad had this picture on his computer of Josh Brooks jumping the mount at Cadwell.
He's so famous.
Yeah, I had this picture in my mind of this track must be an awesome track. You can jump a superbike. This is like next level awesome. And then the first race I watched there, I'm thinking, no way that 35 bikes are racing against each other on this footpath. It looks like a damn footpath. And there's a funny story I heard. There was one of the, I think it was Top Rack. This year went to Cadwell.
Yeah.
And they sort of pulled up there, and he saw what was the track, and he's like, is the track over that hill? And like, no, this is the track. And he's like, no, surely this is not the track. Like there has to be another. This is like the truck support or the cart support for crash. It's like, no, this is the track. And he's like, there's no way you're getting me to race here. I could not believe it. I was like, this track is mental. But I do think when you see Australian tracks, you do take them for granted how good they are. Except, I mean, Hidden Valley had that problem. I think it was Herfoss had a pretty bad crash there a couple of years ago, which was the first time I'd seen that.
A lot of the circuits are like that. If it just happens right spot at the right time, normally no one, touch wood, no one crashes there. So it's just like a bit of a freak, but it happened. And then it's not like when you go into that turn, you think, oh shit, no, I've got through.
It's sort of just like, if it does happen, you sort of become aware of that consequence, but until like it's such a sort of freak incident, you don't think of it that much. Okay.
100%. Like that feeling when you come out of turn.
Okay, that's something that I always thought about. I was like, is it way in your mind? Because most of the time it looks like it's a fairly, and I'm a layman, but it looks like a fairly straightforward turn until you sort of hit that problem. Other than that, I think I'm done with the question, Josh. Did we lose him?
No, thanks for the show. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Hopefully you can assist and, try and get more people to watch. Like I said, that's I think a good selling point is the races aren't super long, and everyone that goes, I
always say if you can see the bikes that you're riding on the road on a track, that's always a good starting point. And that's definitely happening.
100%, and that just shows how good the bikes are. But don't ride them like an idiot on the road if you're going to do that.
Safety first.
That's what racetracks are for. 100%. If you have that itch, go buy an Ovali from the guy you're taking his seat from.
Come buy one of them. A little bit safer.
100%. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Josh. It's been a real pleasure to pick your brain.
I appreciate it, and I hope that I was able to help. And like I said, hopefully I get to see you guys at one of the ASBK rounds, or if not, you can follow it on TV.
I've already booked in the Sydney round. I've told my wife we're all going there. It's a night race. It's only an hour of two races. It should be good.
It'll be awesome.
If you end up being world Australian champion for the 4th time this year, can we get the exclusive interview after that as well of the story of the season?
no, we'll do it and we'll talk through the year. It'll just be like, oh, round 1 was awesome, round 2 was awesome, round 3. That's from myself. I don't mean it like that, but yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's awesome, Josh. Thank you so much, mate.
Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night, buddy. Good
You
luck.
too.